Hey everybody, welcome back to 90 and Out. I'm your host Timothy Holt, and if you like the content on this channel, let me know. If you want to comment any snide remarks or tell me I'm just full of it, go ahead and do that in the comment section YouTube provides. I'm good with that, okay? I will respond to your comments. It might be in like tongue-in-cheek fashion. It might be just yeah, okay, sure. Thanks for the advice, but no thanks. It might be a long, thorough, intellectual conversation, of which I do definitely enjoy. But no matter what comment it is, please comment in the comment section on if you like this content or what direction you would like this channel to go. We are discussing the Bible, the Christian Bible. Specifically, right now in our teen class at 6 points, we're discussing 2 Corinthians, Paul's second letter to the Christians at Corinth. Now, I will be reading from a variety of, actually it'll be the New King James Version of the Christian Bible. Okay. If you read from a different version, let me know the differences in the comments. If you don't read the Bible at all, let me know that too, because I'm going to guess that most of the people who watch these videos don't pick it up and read it for themselves, which I would highly recommend you do, by the way. Don't take my word for it. Pick it up, read it for yourself. In our teen class last night, we covered 2 Corinthians 3. Now, to be fair, this is a letter written to the Christians in ancient Corinth about 56 AD, and it would have been read aloud. It would have been written in common Greek at the time, and also there are several ancient documents, manuscripts, covering that from the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Septuagint, the Masoretic, and the like. There are just gobs of them. So definitely, if you want to look at ancient Greek writings, look at the originals. Not, well, technically the originals, but they're the oldest copies we have, and they date back to around 70 to 80 AD. So they're pretty close to the actual originals. Maybe second draft or second or third printing, so to speak, which we see that common with books now. So, but we are looking at chapter 3. If you want to look at the rest of this playlist, go for it, leading up with some backstory. I'm going to do a little overview, flyover of what's going on in ancient Corinth at this time. It's 56 AD, so you have Emperor Nero in Rome, and he is not real friendly with Christians. He historically had a knack for, well, sticking them on poles and lighting them on fire to light his streets and various other gruesome things. Definitely not kosher. But it was brought to my attention by a couple of teenagers in our class, as well as my wife after class, that just talking about ancient history as ancient history doesn't do us any good. So we're going to see what this relates to today. Mainly because recently there have been some pastors killed, straight up killed in some riots. I'm not going to call them protests, because protests are by nature peaceful. And if you're destroying entire communities and lighting buildings on fire with Molotov cocktails and shooting people, you are not peaceful. So they're riots. They're full-blown riots. Chaos, mob rule in major cities across the U.S. And you know what? To those people who are stuck in those positions, my prayers definitely go out for you. And no, that's not meant tongue-in-cheek. That is serious. Okay? That is serious. I am praying for you. Places like Portland and Seattle and Los Angeles. Chicago, and even closer to home. I live in western Pennsylvania, somewhat rural area in northern Butler County, and I can see on the news and reports in Pittsburgh, which is not that far from me, as well as Philadelphia and Harrisburg, of disgruntled people, angry and full of strife, just projecting that out. Before we get into the main crux of chapter 3, I am praying for you. And by all means, reach out to me and talk to me if you want someone who will listen. I will listen. So, let's get into this. Like I like to say, don't take my word for it, pick it up, read it for yourself. We're going to actually read the text. So, let's do that. Do we begin again to command ourselves, or do we need some others? Epistles of commendation to you and letters of commendation from you. You are our epistle written on our hearts, known and read by all men. Clearly, you are the epistle of Christ, ministered by us, written not with ink, but by the Spirit of the living God, not on tables of stone, but on tables of flesh, that is, of the heart. Now, before we keep going, let's be mindful that Paul is writing to Christians. He's not writing to the general population of Corinth. He's writing to Christians. Okay? So, bear that in mind. If you are a Christian right now, he's writing to you as a tertiary audience, as another audience to this letter. So, he's writing to you. If you're not a Christian, you can choose to ignore us, or you can become one. And I'll introduce you to a carpenter friend of mine named Jesus. So, let's keep going. And we have such trust through Christ towards God, not that we are significant. Yeah. Let's try that again. Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think of anything as being from ourselves, but our sufficiency is from God, who also made us sufficient as ministers of the new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. But if the ministry of death, written and engraved on stones, was glorious, so that the children of Israel could not look steadily on the face of Moses, but the glory of his countenance, which glory was passing away, how will the ministry of the Spirit not be more glorious? For if the ministry of condemnation had glory, and the ministry of righteousness exceeds much more in glory. For if the ministry of condemnation had glory, I think I already read that, for even what was made glorious had not glory in his respect, because of the glory that excels it. For if what is passing away was glorious, what remains is much more glorious. Therefore, since we have such hope, we use great boldness of speech, unlike Moses, who put a veil over his head, so that the children of Israel could not look steadily at the end of what was passing away, but their minds were blinded. For until this day, the same veil remains, unlifted in the reading of the Old Testament. Because the veil is taken away in Christ. But even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil lies on their hearts. Nevertheless, when one turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of God, are being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as by the Spirit of God. All right, and that is the reading of 2 Corinthians chapter 3. All right, so what does this have to do with us? Well, let's think about this. Last night we discussed school starting, high school starting up. One of the high schools in our area started on Tuesday. First day of class was Tuesday. Another high school starts this coming Wednesday, a week from now. And one of the individuals in class stated emphatically that he already got yelled at several times during the school day for taking off his mask and not wearing it. Or as he put it, I was wearing it over my head. They just said I had to have it on. By the way, if you hang out with teenagers, they have a sense of humor. All of them, even the stuck-up ones, have a sense of humor of some kind. So I can just picture this particular young teenager having his mask strapped to the top of his head and then actually making that comment in comedic fashion like he was telling me in class. Now, it was at the beginning of class before we even started reading, and Paul talks about two different laws here in chapter 3. Now, we're not under the Mosaic law. We're not. By the way, the former Jews that made up most of the Christian population in ancient Corinth weren't either. But there was major tradition and lots of tradition going on, religious tradition. Now, I'm going to be blunt and honest on YouTube right now with all of you, anyone watching this, whether it's this week or years from now. At some point in time, you have to take a stand. So, if you're wondering why we're discussing 2 Corinthians, look at the rest of the playlist for 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. The teens asked to go through this material, so we're going through it. We're looking at what it says, who's talking, who it's for, what it's saying, when was it said, where was it said, and most importantly, why. Why do we have these? And right now, this is why. Okay? Paul uses a dichotomy of the Mosaic law, the Levitical law, the law that every Jew knows. They commit it to memory. Okay, if you're a devout Jew, you know exactly what the Pentateuch says. You know exactly what the Tanakh says. You read it daily. You memorize it. You commit it to your memory. But do you ever take it to heart? And that is what Paul is saying. He's saying you've got to take that to heart. It's got to travel that 18 inches from your head to your heart. Okay? Two different sets of laws. And we discussed this last night. We have laws written on stone. We have laws of this country. We have laws predicated on the Constitution and the founding documents. We have laws that have stood the test of time for over 230 years. However, that doesn't mean people follow them. We have laws like the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law establishing religion or interfering with the free exercise thereof. That is the beginning of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. It's known as the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. So if you're wondering why you have to take a stand, why you have to know these things, then this is why right now, currently. This was updated 14 hours ago. 14 hours ago, okay? California church now facing $52,000 in fines for holding indoor services, singing, not submitting to protocol. Now remember the First Amendment? It says, shall not infringe upon the free exercise thereof. Religious activity. When a governor says, you can't hold church services, the governor has no legal authority to make that determination. None whatsoever. You can say, thanks for the advice, Governor. Okay? Now, I'm not saying you should be looting and rioting, but you know what? There's a big difference between burning entire neighborhoods down to the ground, burning a Wendy's down to the ground, protesting arm in arm, chanting and screaming and hooting and hollering and yelling for police to go away, arm in arm with a certain governor of Pennsylvania, and holding church. California church that had previously been fined $10,000 for holding a morning and evening indoor service with singing in violation of county COVID regulations, is now facing more than $52,000 fines. In fines, an additional $5,000 per service possible for every indoor gathering they hold. In an updated post to YouTube on Thursday, Jack Triber of North Valley Baptist Church in Santa Clara showed screenshots of paperwork that was taped to the doors of the church totaling $52,750 in fines. The document cited unlawful indoor gathering. This is a quote, by the way, from the document. Failing to comply with required social distancing practices, not requiring congregants or church attendees to face coverings while attending, performing and speaking at indoor worship services, and permitting congregants or church service attendees to sing during service. Did I mention the First Amendment to the United States does not give governors the authority to issue these edicts when in relation to churches? By the way, I can pull it up right here. Let me try to pull it up here. Governor Wolf, emergency declaration. Governor Wolf is the governor of Pennsylvania. By the way, if you pull up his declarations, okay, there is in very small print at the very bottom of the declaration an exemption for churches. And it says one of the exemptions for these emergency declarations dating back 6 months ago, back to March, there is an exemption for churches, okay? The reason for that is the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Legally, a governor has no authority to dictate anything in regards to a worship service or a church service. By the way, this is not just for Christians. This is any religious service. Now, if your religious service is butchering animals in sacrificial style, yeah, the health department can have a say and a word on that. So can the USDA, because that's across the board. Anytime you butcher an animal, there are rules and regulations, whether it's religious or not. But as far as singing is concerned, yeah, you can do that. As far as worship core tenets, you can do that. Jewish synagogues, yeah, they can meet. Muslim mosques, yep, you can have that. Hindu, yeah, you can have that. Pick your flavor, yeah, you can have that. We have religious freedom here in the United States. Now, that religious freedom only goes so far as exercising it. Notice it says, shall not infringe upon the free exercise thereof. If you choose not to exercise that freedom, then don't be surprised when you no longer have it. Now, that is my rant. We should probably get back to the text, though. It was brought to my attention we need to make this relevant. Paul is using this relevancy. You have Emperor Nero in Rome persecuting Christians. He's literally having them hunted down and executed publicly in pretty gruesome fashion. He has some pet lions that he likes to feed human flesh to. Namely Christians, and Jews, by the way. Yeah, Nero didn't like the Jews either. He liked to see them burn alive. Okay, sounds like some rioters that we know, huh? Yeah. So he says, if the law was glorious. By the way, if you're a Jew, this you probably already know. The Mosaic law is considered glorious. But if the law is touted as the arbitrator of all things good and righteous, then how much more is the law written on hearts, written inside of us? How good is the law? We discussed this last night, by the way, in our youth class. Our youth class usually lasts about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, okay? And we discussed this at pretty great length with the teens. How good is the law if it's not enforced? Why do most people wear seatbelts? It's because it's been ingrained in them that they just wear the seatbelt. It's not because law enforcement can adequately enforce that law to the letter of the law. Every time you get in your car, seatbelt. I remember when I was a teenager, we had a car that had an automatic shoulder strap. I don't know if any of you remember that, but back in the 90s, a lot of cars had automatic shoulder straps. It was right after seatbelt laws became really heavily enforced, and it would start out here, and you could unclip it if you wanted, which made it a whole lot easier and more comfortable, by the way, to get in. But it would, as soon as you shut your door, it would go, okay? And it was to force you to wear a seatbelt. However, can you get seatbelt tickets? Yeah, you can. I know people who do, but overwhelming majority of the time, are law enforcement officers going to pull you over and give you a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt? No, they can't. Why? Because physically they can't. They can't be everywhere all the time. Okay? Same thing with speeding. It's a running thing here in the United States that you can drive 5-10 miles over the speed limit at any given point in time and probably not worry about getting pulled over for speeding. Are you technically speeding? Yes, you are. It's a speed limit. But are you going to get a ticket for it? Probably not. So a law is only as good as its enforcement. So the best laws are the ones written on our hearts. They're the ones written on who we are as a person. This is Paul's way of saying that. Okay? He's saying, if God gave us the sufficiency to save us, to redeem us of all of our wrongs, all of our faults, all of our failures, then he gave us the sufficiency to stand on that truth, no matter what. There are two laws that you must live by on this planet. If you don't, you are at risk of the judge and punishment, the failure for doing that. And there are the laws of nature and of nature's God. By the way, if that sounds familiar, then you're familiar with the founding documents of the United States Constitution, specifically the Declaration of Independence. Okay? The laws of nature and of nature's God. And Paul is saying that the laws of nature's God were written on stone tablets and passed down by Moses. But the laws of nature are all around you. If you don't think self-defense is the law of nature, try stepping on a rattlesnake and see what happens. Let me know how that goes for you. If you don't think the laws of nature have the law of protecting your family, then try to enter the den of a mama bear with her cubs and let me know how that goes for you. It's probably not going to go very well. Okay? If you don't think that self-preservation is a law of nature, take a fish out of water and throw it on the deck of your boat and see what happens. That fish will flop around and try to get back into that water. Okay? If you don't think there are laws of nature, then look around. There are. There's also laws of nature's God. And the reason why we call them the Ten Commandments is because they're the top 10. Okay? But there's even top 2 that Jesus gives us. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. And the second is like unto the first. Love your neighbor as yourself. So if you're burning down buildings, if you're looting, if you're causing riots and chaos and fear, you're not loving your neighbor. By the way, when the disciples asked Jesus, who's my neighbor? And he said, the least of these. So if you're promoting killing babies before they're born, you're not loving your neighbor, because the babies, they are literally the least of us. They're the smallest human beings, period. Okay? So, as a recap of what we discussed in Youth Night last night, and what I'm discussing with you right now, 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Paul's writing to Christians, and he says, hey, there's 2 laws. There's a law written on paper, on stone tablets, written for you to read. And then there's the law of your heart. Which one are you going to follow? Which one is going to be your guide? Which one are you going to stand? Are you going to be the one who plants themselves like a tree and looks the rest of the world in the eye, when the rest of the world is going to chaos, when the rest of the world, as my grandma used to say, going to hell in a handbasket, when they are trying to convince you that something wrong is right, are you going to plant yourself like a tree and look them in the eye and say, you move, your move, I'm not moving, I'm standing right here. I'm going to stand on the law written on my heart, even when it's in contradiction to law everywhere around me, even when it's in contradiction to the mob, to the riot, to the fear, false evidence appearing real. I'm going to stand on the truth, and the truth gives me liberty. As Paul writes, where the truth is, there is liberty. Now, verse 17, the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Okay? You cannot have an endorsement of killing people, an endorsement of rioting and looting and burning things to the ground and fear and have liberty. Where there is liberty, there is life. And where there is life, there is liberty. Thank you for watching. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. If you think I'm full of it, let me know in the comments. If you think that this is all a bunch of ancient document dogma hogwash, go ahead and tell me that too. But if you think there's something more to it, let me have that comment. What laws are written on your heart? Let me know, because they might be different than mine. I can almost guarantee it. I'm not saying my heart is right. I'm not saying yours is wrong, or mine is wrong, or yours is right, just different. However, I will tell you that there are laws that govern all of mankind, all of nature. They're nature's laws. And when we violate them, we suffer the consequences. And oftentimes, they're painful and lead directly to death. So, I charge you, I challenge you, find out what laws of nature's and of nature's God are. Plant yourself like a tree and tell everybody else who says what's wrong is right. You tell them they mean you. However, if you're going to do that, make sure you're right. My dad was telling my kids a story last time we were out visiting about my brother in high school getting into a lot of arguments and a lot of disputes with teachers and staff and faculty. And he said, yeah, he argued a lot, but as much as I hate to say it, the truth is, he was right most of the time. So, Corey, if you're going to get in an argument with teachers, staff, and faculty without a mask, make sure you're right. If you're going to get in trouble for going against a rule written on paper, make sure you're in the right. Make sure that rule is unjust. However, also be mindful, you are subject to the authority of the land. You're subject to the government and the punishment thereof. And it can be very severe. Out of the 12 apostles, one committed suicide after betraying Jesus. One died of old age, having several attempts of public execution, including being boiled in oil, ran off a cliff, flogged, and several other ways to try to kill him, but they could not kill him. They even left him for dead after stoning. That was John, the beloved. Ultimately, he lived out the rest of his days in a prison penal colony on an island called Patmos. The other 10 were all publicly executed. Every single one of them were publicly executed in some fashion. Paul, the writer of most of the letters in the New Testament, he was publicly executed in Rome. So, all those famous letters by Martin Luther King Jr. were written from the Birmingham jail. So if you're going to plant yourself like a tree, and you're going to tell the world around you, you move. Your move. then make sure you're right. Make sure you're in the right. Make sure what you're standing against is unjust. Make sure. Prove it. Think about it with cognitive forethought. And make sure you're standing righteously. Because if you're not, there's a good chance you're going to die and go to hell and be destroyed. There's a good chance that 20 years from now, nobody's going to ever have heard of you. There's a good chance that nobody's going to care. When everybody else is rioting and losing their flippin' minds, remain calm and follow the laws of nature, if nature's God. May God bless you.